the 2016 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. The Democratic race for United States Senate.
Good evening. I'm Bill Nigut. I'm the host and executive producer of Two-Way Street and Political Rewind at Georgia Public Broadcasting. We'd like to welcome you to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series originating from the GPB studios in Atlanta. This is the debate among the Democratic candidates for the United States Senate. So let's meet the candidates. They are in alphabetical order. Jim Barksdale, the president and founder of the investment firm Equity Investment Corporation. Cheryl Copeland, she's a project manager from Hiram. And John Coyne III, he's the CEO of Management Enterprises, Inc., with more than 40 years of experience in real estate. And now let's meet our panelists. Katie Foody is a reporter for the Associated Press. She focuses on breaking news in Georgia politics. Jim Galloway writes Political Insider, a political column for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Rose Scott is an award-winning journalist and co-host for Closer Look on WABE 90.1 FM. Tonight's debate is going to consist of 3 rounds. For more information on the rules for each round, you can visit the Atlanta Press Club website at atlantapressclub.org. So let's get started. In the first round, each candidate will be asked one question by our panelists. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer the questions. Katie, you get the first question to Jim Barksdale.
Mr. Barksdale, you qualified for this race nearly 2 months ago at the state capitol as a political newcomer. To date, your website contains very little detail of your policy positions. How can you ask Democratic voters to support you in just a few weeks with so little information?
Well, it's true that I was late into the race, primarily because, frankly, it wasn't something that I sought for myself. I felt that Georgians really needed to have a choice this year, that it was a time for accountability. And as we got closer to the filing, many other people had been asked, and no one was stepping up to the plate. So I felt that I talked to the party, and the party went through a great bit of vetting of me, and they asked me to run. And so in the end, it wasn't an easy decision for me. Frankly, I haven't been a politician. I've run an investment firm. We've been very successful. I have responsibilities there. But ultimately, when they ask, I just felt like this is a case where when I look around the country and I see all the people that haven't benefited by the privilege that I've had, the people that have been left behind, I felt like I needed to say yes to the request.
Mr. Barksdale, we're going to get back to that in a couple minutes, I hope. But Rose Scott, you have the next question for Cheryl Copeland.
Thank you, Bill. Ms. Copeland, you've been running on the slogan of willing to serve, not be served. And we hear that a lot from candidates. How can you assure voters that you're going to be different?
Well, I'm different just because of my experience. You can see that my opponents are both businessmen. They own their own business. But I identify with the working and middle class because I'm part of that class. That in itself is going to give you something different. I identify with people that have maybe lost a mate and have to figure out common things in that situation. For instance, you go from 2-income family down to 1-income family, and you have to make hard choices. So with that, I am going to be a little bit different than my opponents. Thank you.
Jim, you have an opportunity now to ask a question of John Coyne.
Well, let's get right into it here, Mr. Coyne here, okay? All right, you say that home mortgage loans should be backed by the federal government with 30-year T-bills instead of the system that we've got. And you've got some experience in real estate. Tell us what you're trying to you would be trying to do to accomplish with that. Instead of using Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and such.
Well, let me start this way. The first thing is, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the others got the ability to sell stock in the stock market with some of the change in the laws, which got Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac into trouble. Mortgage-backed securities, and I gave a speech last night, for mortgage-backed securities were bundled into units of 5,000 mortgages, say with an average of $200,000 for $1 billion. But when the stock was sold on the open market, they wound up marking these things up about 100%. So every time they did $1 billion worth of loans, whoever bundled them together and put them together made $1 billion. And there's 4 or 5 ways that the banks or the bundlers could make money. They sold credit default swaps. They took some of the stock and sold it short. They got guarantees from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac on the mortgages. So they had several ways to make money. My idea is...
You've got to get a last sentence in here. Your time is
He's
up.
got to get closer because I can't see.
Okay.
Now I can see the 15 seconds. So my point is safe money. People who vested into bonds and such or savings bonds goes into doing mortgages.
All right. I want to exercise a very brief moderator's prerogative here for you, Mr. Barksdale. I thought Katie Foody gave you an opportunity to maybe tell us in a couple of sentences what the message is you're running on. And I'd love to hear that. In a couple of sentences, what's your message to why you should be the U.S. Senator from Georgia?
Well, I think the key message is that the trickle-down economics that we were sold to and that I bought into for the many years that I voted Republican has not worked. And as Cheryl said, it's left too many people behind. And we've got to get better jobs. We've got to get an improvement in the in the minimum wage. And we've got to start investing in infrastructure. So those are part of it. I'm very much upset about the incarceration, and I'm very worried, frankly. I hear about privatizing Social Security, and from the investment business, I've seen doctors and lawyers come into my office with millions of dollars that they've lost from. These are not, people with lack of ability. These are very capable people, and to think about putting Social Security at risk like that upsets me.
All right. So that concludes our first round. In the second round, each candidate will ask one question to the opponent of their choice. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Cheryl Copeland, you get the first question.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Barksdale. Mr. Barksdale, many people in our country believe that our country is being run by corporations, big banks, and big oil. And they're really upset by it. They believe that the laws are actually geared to protect them and not to protect us. Your website, you mentioned that your company handled over $5 billion for your clients. From that, one could very easily extrapolate that you are a millionaire.
Ask your question, please.
My question, getting to it, is if it came down to a vote where you had to vote for something that was either going to benefit you and your corporation or benefit the people, how would you vote?
Absolutely for the people, but let me say this. I was raised Baptist, and there's this old hymn that says, all that I have is thine alone, a trust, O Lord, to thee. And I very much believe I am a millionaire. Mm-hmm. And I've been blessed in too many ways.
Yes.
I didn't deserve it, but it doesn't belong to me. I'm a steward of that talent, all that's come to me. And it's my job. I totally agree with every word you said. Big money has had too much of an influence, and that's what we've got to change.
Yes. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds to rebut if you want
Okay.
to.
My rebuttal is, Georgia, if you really want to see a change in our government and you want someone who's going to champion the working people, we cannot afford to send a wealthy businessman to look over our interests. I ask that you vote for Cheryl Copeland for Senate.
All right. John Coyne.
That was a little bit of a tag, but...
Did you want to make a very quick response?
I think I already think it said it before. I totally agree that I have been blessed with wealth, and it's my job as a steward of that wealth, a steward of everything that I've had, to make sure that it's used for the common good.
All right. Let's go. John Coyne, you have the next question.
My question's for Mr. Barksdale. Mr. Barksdale, you and I had a meeting before a get-together out at Roslaria Park on the 23rd of April. And at that time, I asked you why you were running and who initiated you to run. And you told me that the party came to see you at your office, and the following day you went and met with them again, where they so-called vetted you and told you they didn't have a candidate to run.
What's your question?
My question is, they received 3 FECs from 3 different people who qualified on the 7th and 8th of March, and my position
Your
was...
question.
My question is, why did you run when there was 3 other people in the race?
Mr. Barksdale?
Well, first of all, I was not aware of anyone else in the race. And I think the party is focused on a viable candidate. I happen to have resources, as I said, that I don't deserve. I've said that I'm going to use a fair amount of those resources. I've given away, frankly, way too much in the world, or not too much. I've given away quite a bit of money. And I find it frustrating that that does so little for the world. I still look around and I see people suffering. And I want to do something about that. And so when the party comes to me and asks me, and it's not exactly the way you portrayed it, but close enough, okay, in the sense that they did ask me, it really is a sense that they have known my focus on human rights, they've known my focus on trying to help other people, and they believe that I'm a viable candidate. And this election's too important to lose. We have got to change the policies. Too many people are hurting. And so that's why I'm running.
You have a chance to respond. You have 30 seconds.
Well, excuse me. My response is the party, by backing Mr. Barksdale in the newspaper at several meetings, have violated the law of Georgia of good faith and fair dealing. We all signed agreements and paid $5,220, but we're not getting the same service, basically, from the party of Georgia.
Real quick.
I just want to say that you know, maybe I don't want to say that the people that ask me are Democrats, but I don't want to say that it's the DPG particularly and that anything was violated.
Okay,
but I will say it was Democratic leadership people.
Okay, fine. Thank you all very much. You have an opportunity now to ask questions, Mr. Barksdale.
John, I was just going to ask how you feel about campaign finance reform.
Well, I have a complete list of campaign finance reform on my website. It's also with the League of Women Voters. I believe that every federal, every state, and every local candidate should receive money in equal from that entity, so you don't have millionaires and PACs controlling, in all due respect, controlling elections with money. And that's the sole source that somebody goes after you to run because you have money. A la Michelle Nunn burned $50 million and lost by 200,000 votes.
Do you want to respond? You have a chance to just respond to his comment.
Well, I think that everyone here seems to be in agreement that campaign finance reform is very important. It's just a problem. To me, government becomes corrupted when it is not representing the people, but instead is representing corporate America or Wall Street or anyone else that is basically the people they call on the phone for money as opposed to the voices they need to listen to at home. So I totally believe that finance reform is an essential part of getting the system back on track.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Barksdale. If you're just joining us, this is the debate between the Democratic candidates in Georgia's United States primary. We'll now go to our final round. In this round, each panelist will ask a question to the candidate of his or her choice until we run out of time. I'll determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. Rose Scott, you get the first question.
Thank you, Bill. This question is for candidate John Coyne. You have a 3-part immigration plan, part of which includes for workers after their visa expires, you want to basically send them back to their country. But for a lot of farmers who rely on those workers, and here in Georgia, what's your message to them about that plan, that part of your immigration plan?
Well, I have a degree from agriculture from the University of Georgia, and I'm well versed. A friend of mine is the executive director of the what we call the Nuts and Berries Association, who bring in the migrant workers to pick the berries and such. That's the most difficult to control. They don't know what happens to those people when they come across the border. But if you look at my website, the plan that I have was exactly the same when I ran against Cynthia McKinney, to seal the border, make a military-type operation, and control the visas. Now, one last thing, and I know he's got 30 seconds coming up. You have to realize that we're creating under the Obama administration about 200,000 jobs a month. 2.5 million a year. During the Obama administration, we have given out 2.5 million visas in 1 year. So basically, we are creating jobs for people who are coming into this country.
Mr. Coyne, I want to exercise my prerogative for a second here. I think, Rose, the farmers in South Georgia just this week are saying their crops are dying in the field because they don't have workers who can harvest the crops. So what's your answer to that problem?
Well, the problem is that it's a paperwork problem now, going through the steps in Washington to verify people, so they don't if you bring in 10 or 20,000 pickers, half of them don't wind up on the streets in Atlanta, and not out picking in the field. There's huge numbers out there, but the farmers, and Charles Hall is the head of one of the main ones, and he and I went to school together. They have this problem every year. They've tried prisoners, they've tried $8 an hour, $10 an hour, nothing worked. When the berries come and have to be picked, you need a whole lot of people, and that has always been a problem. But one thing you need to realize, Bill, from the way the Farm Bureau works and Saxby Chambliss when he was in Washington, when they have those losses, they get a lot of tax credits and low-interest loans to cover them.
Okay. Katie Foody, you have an opportunity now to ask.
Could I get in on that one?
Very quickly.
Okay. All right. You asked how we fix that. One thing that I saw that same article that you saw, and one thing that I noticed was that the Department of Labor, once they completed and approved these workers, they were sending that approval to Homeland Security via U.S. mail. So there, an efficiency would be to implement computer systems where we can cut out all of that middleman, cut out some of that latency in the system, and also reduce some of the time that it takes to approve these.
All right, thank you. Katie Foody, you have a question?
Ms. Copeland, I have a question for you. On your campaign website, you say that you do not believe in creating new restrictions on Second Amendment rights. President Obama has used executive orders focused on new background check requirements. Hillary Clinton has said that she would close the so-called gun show loophole. Do you disagree with their positions?
Gun control is a really tricky thing to deal with. What I meant by that is I didn't want us to put into effect any more restrictions that would limit Americans' ability to carry guns or protect themselves. And that's all I really meant by that. But thinking about Senator Clinton, I think it would be a good idea to go a little bit deeper in background checks and making sure that we're not putting guns in the hands of the criminals.
Jim Galloway, you have a question?
Well, Bill, if you'll indulge me, I'd like an answer from all three candidates on this.
They've only got 30 seconds, though.
Okay, all right. In the presidential campaign, Bernie Sanders has suggested some serious alterations to the Affordable Care Act. Do you support single-payer universal health care, or do you prefer the current Obamacare model?
Who do you want to give that to first?
Mr. Barksdale, we'll start with you and work right to left, or left to right.
Well, I'll start by saying that for all the progress that Obamacare brought, it's not a perfect situation. Whatever step we're going to make, I want to see broader health care, and I want it more affordable. As we talked with them at the very beginning, I'm not a politician. This is not an area that I have studied enough in depth to give you probably the kind of full answer that I would normally like to give. But I would say that basically the pillars of any approach to me is to broaden the care and make it more affordable.
All right. Mr. Coyne, why don't we let you try that next?
Well, Bill knows that this is on my website. I have a detailed plan about health care. First thing in this state, we have to go ahead and add the 680,000 people that deserve Medicaid onto the roll, and the legislature and the governor has blocked this. The second thing is Medicare is the best run program in the country by far. Costs about $9,000 per individual, and those individuals are all over the age of 65. My plan has MediHealth in the middle, which takes the cost of Medicare and the services and brings it down and ties it to Medicaid.
All right, Mr. Coyne, thank you. And finally, Ms. Copeland, you want to respond?
Yeah, the health care, it is now giving coverage to, 20 million people that did not have, couldn't get insurance because of pre-existing conditions are now covered. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I agree with Mr. Coyne that we need to expand the Medicare portion of it. I'm not sure why we're still having this debate, because this law was passed six years ago. So it's time to just look for the gaps and move forward.
All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for answering questions. We've run out of time for our question period. So now every candidate on the stage will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. And we're going to start with you, Cheryl Copeland.
Okay. All right. I got into this race to give Georgians a real choice at the ballot. It's time that we have something other than wealthy businessmen on the ballot. During my campaign, I traveled from Columbus to Augusta. And the thing that I heard over and over again is that it was time for a change, and I agree with that. I am asking Georgia, I'm asking all of you Georgians to trust me to be your next senator.
Thank you very much, Cheryl Copeland. Jim Barksdale, it's your turn.
Thanks. I want to thank the Atlanta Press Club, thank you, the journalist, and thank all the viewers tonight for listening in. The theory that somehow if we just got out of the way of business and let it alone, that our job opportunities were going to increase and incomes were going to rise hasn't worked. Too many people have been left behind. I think we need to change that. We need to renegotiate our trade deals. We need to provide incentives to bring back tax dollars so that we get and jobs to America. And we need to invest in our infrastructure and our education. This election is about accountability for failed policies in Washington. If you agree, visit my website at jimbarksdaleforsenate.com. Contribute if you can, and volunteer, because I need your vote to take on the policies in Washington.
All right, Jim Barksdale, thank you so much. And John Coyne, you have the final closing statement.
Thank you very much, Bill, and thank you for the panel, and thank you to the Atlanta Press Club. I've been here several times. Let me tell you this. We're at a point in Georgia politics. The last 5 people that have run for U.S. Senate have lost, and I know each one of them individually, and the reason that I ran is because, in all due respect to my competitors, I believe I'm the only one that can beat Johnny Isakson, and how to win is to get all the Democratic vote, all the independent vote, and at least 25% of the Republican vote, and that's what it takes to win this election. None of the people who've run in the past, including Michelle Nunn, have been able to do that. Some of the people have lost by 500,000 votes. We need a realist and a moderate to go to Washington and defeat Johnny Isakson and get things done. And my website tells you everything I'll do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coyne. Well, that concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters the primary elections will be held on Tuesday, May 24th. Early voting is already underway. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging the debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club and all of the debates they'll host this primary election season, visit atlantapressclub.org. Stay with us for the debate between the Republican candidates for U.S. Senate. That's up next. I'm Bill Nigut. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Good night.